from Shabbos Parshas Nitzavim, Vayelech, Tavshin. One second, let me get this out over here. Tavshin Lamed Beis, Kov Gimel El. Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem. You are standing all today. Lefnei Havaya Lekechem, before Havaya your God, Roshechem Shiftechem Begomer, your heads, your tribes, etc. Tapchem and Shechem, your children and your wives, Begomer La'avrecha Bevris Gomer, to pass through in the covenant, in the treaty, in the promise to the Eibush. Isa because we are results brought down the writings of the Arizal B'Shem HaZoyar, in the name of the Zoyar, Sheperet HaKosuv Eser Madreges. These psukim at the beginning of Parshas Nitzavim, when it enumerates all the different people that were standing today, it goes into 10 distinctions. There is Roshechem, your heads, Shiftechem, your tribes. We'll soon speak about the difference between them. Zeknechem, your elders, Shetrechem, your officers, Koilish Yisrael, every Jewish person. So that you have 5. Then you have another pasuk where it says, Tapchem, your children, the Shechem, your wives, Gercha, your convert, Chaytevetzecha, your wood chopper, Shayvamecha, your water carrier. So you have 10 distinctions that the pasuk enumerates over here. So he says, these 10 distinctions are actually divided into 2 different levels as divided by the psukim. Chamish a pasuk Harishan, there's 5 in the first pasuk, like we said before, Hachem Roshechem Shiftechem, beginning from your heads, tribes. Now the Rebbe right away says and explains that it's not like you would think that heads and tribes are connected. She'ein pirushay Roshechem Lishiftechem. It doesn't mean the heads of the tribes, but Elohim Shtei Madreges, these are 2 distinct things. And in the beard on the side, he brings down from the Targum Yonason Ben Azil that he says heads means the heads of the Sanhedrin, and the Shifteicha means the heads of the tribes, the boss of the tribes, the ones that run the Shvat. So we see that there's 5 in the first pasuk, like we said before, Roshechem, Shiftechem, Zeknechem, Sheitrechem, Koilish Yisrael. And then v'chamesh v'pasuk hasheni, we have 5 in the other pasuk where he talks about Tapchem, Neshechem, Gercha, Chaytevetzecha, and Shayvamecha. If you pay attention, it's like almost like by stature. There's Roshechem, Shiftechem, Zeknecha, and Shifta, and then Koilish Yisrael. We'll discuss that later as well, that's some stature. And the rest are like more on the receiving end, as the Mimer will also explain. Women, children, etc., etc. So he says, the Rebbe asked a question on line 8, we need to understand. The Kibun Shekvar Namar Betchilas HaKosav, Atum Nitzavim Goyim Kulchem, since it already says at the beginning of the pasuk that you are standing, all of you. You already included the whole Klal Yisrael. And he even says afterwards, again, every single Jew is here. Kulam biyachat, all of them together. Lama hiskir gam prater madreges. Why does he mention also the detailed levels? Roshechem, Shiftechem, the heads and the tribes, ad shayvamecha, until the water carriers. Gam tzarkel also we need to understand. Lama nakat hakosav alosh nitzavim davke. Why does the pasuk use specifically the word nitzav for standing? That you are all standing together. There are different words that could be used, like we'll talk about soon. There could be amida or kima. Why specifically nitzavim? And the Rebbe says it's not just why this or not that, but even more so the question is that seemingly this has negative connotations. The word nitzavim is used in a negative manner. Where do we see it? This is an expression that we find in the Torah for an untoward, unwanted thing. That says, Dasan Aviram went out standing outside their tent by the rebellion against Moshe Rabbeinu with Adas Koirach. So we see Nitzavim has negative connotations. So why would we use it here? Also, we need an explanation of what it says, that you are standing, all of you, before Hashem your God. The fact that the Yidden are in the state of all of you, which the Alter Rebbe uses a term that this means, the Alter Rebbe Torah says this, that you are as one. Why is there a oneness amongst the Yidden? Our bodies are separate bodies. The oneness amongst the Yidden is a result of the neshamas of the Yidden themselves. There's not something that forces us to be together, but there's an essential bond because of our neshamas. Let's explain in Tanya concerning love of another Yid. You should love your fellow as yourself. That why is this so? Why do we have such an obligation? And how can it be asked from us to love another like ourselves? That seems to be an impossibility. So the Alter Rebbe explains, because we are all together, we are one Father, and we are all fit in with each other. We're really all part of one whole. So because all the neshamas are really part of one whole, corporate Israel, some people like to call it, we are one essence really. That is why it's possible to love another Yid as myself. And the Alter Rebbe goes on to explain, this happens when we focus on the neshama, because the neshama is the reason why we are one. So the Rebbe says, but from the pasuk, it almost seems to indicate that because it's lefnei Hashem Elokeichem, that's why it's kulchem. But under other circumstances, where it's not lefnei Havai Elokeichem, then we would not have the idea of kulchem. This idea that there has to be the unity of all Yidden has to be constant, loidak hayoim, not just the day that he speaks about atam nitzavim hayoim, v'loidak ba'amdam lefnei Havai Elokeichem, not just when they are standing before Havai Elokeichem. So therefore, what's the meaning over here? They says that atam nitzavim hayoim lefnei Havai Elokeichem kulchem, that it seems to be as if the kulchem is a result of external reasons, not the internal thing, because they all the neshamas are really one. Another question that I've asked, in the continuation of the pasuk about passing through the covenant, that Rashi explains, what does it mean that when you make a treaty, when you make a covenant, you are passing through? What's the idea of passing through? You made a deal, you made a covenant, you made an agreement, you made a promise. What's the passing through? He says, literally, they would pass through something in the making of a covenant. Concerning this, Rashi explains, so those that made a covenant, they would make, top of page Vav, that they make they make a partition on one side and a partition on the other side, and the partners and the parties to the covenant, to the treaty, to the promise, pass through in between. Like it says, this described in the Sefer Yirmiyahu, there was the calf that they cut into two, and they passed between its parts, between its sides, and because of that, because they went in between this item that was like one thing, so it was considered that they were as one as well. We have a similar idea by the Bris Bein Absadim in a similar vein, that Avram Avinu and the Eibishter passed through the split animal as well. So the Rebbe says that seemingly the description used over here is a little bit unusual or not completely understood. Seemingly what's being said over here is two different things, and not just different, the Rebbe adds, but they are opposites of each other. Mechitza mekan v'oivin ben time, when you make a partition on one side and a partition on the other side, and you pass through in between those partitions, azai ha-mechitza sem shnei dvarim nefrodim. The partitions are not related to each other. They're like, whatever, you want to call them bookends. But it's not like the partitions have any core connection. So therefore, passing through them doesn't really seem to add anything to the unity, if you will. As opposed to the case by Yirmiyahu Hanavi, or like the example we brought from Avraham Avinu, that they cut an animal, they cut the calf into two. Over there it's a totally different thing. That the animal is essentially one animal. And by the two parties to the agreement passing through the one animal, so that is considered as if they're part of now that unity of that essential nature that really this animal is one, so too these two parties are one. So why do we use such an idea about partitions from each side? The partitions from each side do not indicate oneness, because the two parts of the partition, the right partition and left partition, are not really one item, not like a calf. Okay, always based on the Maimer line 9. The idea behind this is, like it's explained in the Mamarim of Arabeim, there are many explanations in the word nitzavim. There's an explanation that nitzavim is an expression of rising up and standing. But rather it's like what it says in the pasuk, in the dream of Yosef, one of the true dreams that Yosef related to his brothers and to Yaakov Avinu was about that they were standing in the field and they were making sheaves, bundles of wheat, and the bundle, Yosef describes about his bundle, my bundle rose up and also stood, but the word for standing, it's used nitzav, not kama alumasi v'amad, v'nemad, but nitzava. What does that show? So let's look at the background. Let's zoom out a little bit. This cholam was about, first of all, in the actual dream itself, what happened. All the other 11 sheaves bowed down to that bundle of wheat of Yosef. And this is symbolic of the fact that the Shvatim would come and bow down to Yosef being the viceroy of Mitzrayim. So when we're talking about the bundle of wheat standing, it's not just about coming from a reclining or lying down position to standing up. It's more than that. Let's see it inside. Line 13. It doesn't just mean that's a state of standing and rising up in comparison to being sitting down or falling on the ground. That's not the only message that's inherent in the word nitzav over there. It's in a way of a height above height over just an ordinary standing or rising up. So already from this, we see that the word nitzav is something unusual. And when he uses the pasuk atem nitzavim hayoim, it shows a very powerful message over here, that it's some type of standing beyond just excluding lying down. It's a standing in a core way, in a powerful way. And to take that even further, we know that the standing of nitzav is used in regards to someone that's in control and higher. Again, similar to the case of Yosef. Another explanation in the word nitzav, that nitzav is an expression of a head, a leader, an officer, anyone that's over someone else is called nitzav. Nitzav melech, like we find a pasuk in Tanakh that says that the king stands, but he doesn't use oimid. He uses nitzav, meaning a powerful standing. It shows on the unique power and strength that there is to be found specifically in a king and uniquely with a king. It's not talking about just like an ordinary person who is free. It's not like a servant that is subservient to his master. Someone that's a free person is, on the one hand, he's not subservient to others, but on the other hand, he doesn't have the full force of being an officer and a head and a leader, that he is over others, that he controls and rules others. But Nitzav Melech indicates not just freedom, but also his power and strength is in such a way that he has control over others. And not only that, the way one has to approach this person, the one who is a king, is in such a type of way that we are obligated to show him respect and honor. Like the ruling in halacha that we do not see him in a bathhouse, etc., because we're not supposed to see a king in a place that does not add to his honor and may even reduce the respect that we have from him. That your eyes will see a king in his beauty only when the king is in a presentable manner, in a beautiful manner. That's the way we're supposed to see a king. So we see how powerful and how great the king is, and that's expressed by the word nitzav. Once we've identified that that's the meaning of the word nitzav, so now we're going to explain why it says atem nitzavim hayom kulchem, though we thought that we found a negative connotation used for it, but it actually has very positive connotations. By the way, the Rebbe will often explain things in one place, and then everywhere else the Rebbe will use a code word, a code phrase, and expect you you know what this means. So many Mamarim, Sichos, and so on, the Rebbe will say, Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem, or Bechlal, the definition of the word nitzavim, Kemoi nitzav melech. And then he will go on, because he's already identified in this mimer for you. You know what nitzav melech means? Nitzav melech means a full force standing, fully standing power and strength, etc., etc. So the Rebbe doesn't have to identify it every single time. He explains it here one time. Nitzav melech shows the full force and power of nitzavim, and therefore, when the Rebbe says nitzav melech, that's supposed to ring a bell in our mind. What we learned today. Or in a similar vein, at the beginning of the Maimer, where he enumerates the 10 different levels. So again, in many places, the Rebbe makes reference to the fact that there are 10 levels of Yidden enumerated in these two psukim, starting from Rashechem, Shiftechem, etc., etc. Here he goes into explicitly explaining Rashechem as one level, Shiftechem as a different level, don't confuse them as one, and so on. So the Rebbe is not going to go in every mimer where he talks about, or every sikha, or every place where he mentions that there's 10 different levels about the Yidden, explain to you how Rashechem is separate from Shiftechem. There's an expression the Chazal use, Divrei Torah anim b'makom echad, v'ashin b'makom acher. The words of Torah are often very few, poor in one place, relying on the fact that in other places it's elaborated upon. The same thing, the Rebbe won't necessarily elaborate and explain it everywhere. So from this mimer, we now know that everywhere else where the Rebbe speaks about 10 levels, and we start figuring out how's it 10 levels, we know from this mimer how the Rebbe divides it and says Rashechem is separate from Shiftechem, etc. Okay, line 25, bottom of page Vav, or the second page of your copies. After we identified what does the word nitzav mean. Nitzav means a very powerful type of standing. In a way like a king stands, that he rules over people and he has to have respect and so on. So now we apply it back to our pasuk and our parsha. The pasuk is relating the praises of Yidden. Atem nitzavim. You the Yidden. Shehem b'mayim masav. The nitzavim lefnei havaya lekechem. That Yidden are in a state and situation of being nitzav, standing powerfully before Hashem lekechem. And how come? Where did Yidden get that from? This is because the great quality of the neshamas of Yidden Kedisa B'Tanya, like it's brought down in Tanya, that the second neshama, in addition to what he speaks about in Perek Aleph about the nefesh Baham, is the Yidden have a second neshama, and that the second nefesh, and that is a part of Hashem above. Actually, so. Uketoyed a Baal Shem Tov, like the teaching of Baal Shem Tov, Sha'etzem, Kishat HaToifes, Bechel, Kishat HaToifes, Bekulei. The essence, when you grasp something of the essence, so then you grasp its entirety. If you have only a ray and a revelation of something, so your connection with the revelation doesn't mean you connect with the essence. But if you grasp a piece of something, so then you are touching its entirety. So therefore, even though we say that a Yid is only a chelik elakam imal, he is only a part of Hashem above, but since the etzem, when you grasp even a part of it, you are grasping all of it, so therefore, Yidden have this great quality of being nitzav, because they are one with Hashem. Va'ad, to such a degree, are we nitzav, that we are nitzav even higher than Havaya Lekechem. V'adla pirush and nitzav lefnei Havaya Lekechem. Lefnei daik, until the explanation of you are standing fast before Havaya Lekechem. Lifnei daik. The simple translation of the pasuk is, we are standing in the presence. Lifnei means in the presence of Havaya Lekechem. But the Rebbe says, let's translate this literally. Before, meaning prior to, higher than. That this is the level, top of page Zayin, that the Yidden are higher than the level of Havaya and Lekechem. Not just higher than the name Elokim, Elagam L'mayla M'Shem Havaya, but also higher than Shem Yudke Vavke. Where do we see such a type of idea? So we actually find there's a pasuk in Tanakh that says something similar, where seemingly a created being can be higher than a certain level of godliness. Similar to what it says in the pasuk, Srafim oimdim maloi, that the very high malachim that are called Srafim are standing above him. Above him is referring to above Shem Adonai, like he's going to say, because that's what it says. Prior to that, it's talking about Shem Adonai, and the Malachim called Srafim are standing above Shem Adonai. Now, the Rebbe is going to bring an interesting medrash that shows that there is an association between the Srafim Oimdim Maloi and Atem Nitzavim Lefnei Havaya Lekechem. And the association is going to be because of both cases are called standing. The Srafim are called standing and the Yidden are called standing. So he says in line 4, can move a masham medrash like it's understood from what they said in the medrash. B'malachim, the medrash says as follows: B'malachim nemar Srafim oimdim maloi, u'b'neshamas nemar atem nitzavim hayom. When it comes to Malachim, it says that the Srafim are standing above him. And when it comes to Neshamas, it says, you are standing today. So we find this idea that the Medrash associates the Malachim standing in a way that they are higher with the Neshamas that are standing. The Medrash is not explicitly referring to the higher part, he's just making the association between the standing. But the Rebbe extrapolates and extends it to the idea of being higher as well. He says in line 6, since the explanation of Srafim are standing above him, it's as if they are higher than the name Adonai, because that's what it says earlier in the pasuk, and it says concerning that Srafim oimdim maloi in Alderach Zeyuvan Gama Pirish to Nitzavim Lifnei Havaya. In a similar vein can be understood explanation of standing prior, lifnei, before, higher than Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. And not only do they have the idea of being higher than, but now let's throw into the mix the Nitzav part, as opposed to the Malachim, which is only Aimdim. We say them as even more so. She'inin the Nitzavim Shenamar ben Neshames Ulamayla Me'inin the Aimdim Shenamar Malachim. The idea of Nitzavim that says by Neshames is higher than the idea of standing that says by Malachim. Can move in Ma'amar Le'el Beinin Kamal Umasav Gam Nitzav, like it's understood from what we explained before, that it's a difference between just rising up of the sheaf, the bundle of wheat, versus also standing upright. That's a very strong standing. So by Malachim it's only Aimdim, higher than Shem Adnai, but by Neshamas it's in a way of a powerful and ruling and respected level of Nitzav in a much more stronger way. This is also in addition to the fact that the Malachim is Aimdim Memal Shem Adnus, but the Yidden, we said, is not just higher than Shem Elikim, but also higher than Shem Havaya. So, in truth, if we really want to break it down, there are additional advantages. The Malachim are only higher than Shem Adnai, and the Yidden are higher than Shem Havaya. The Malachim are only Aimdim, and the Yidden are Nitzavim. Let's continue on line 13. So after we identify this Atem Nitzavim, he says, Mamshach b'kosav Atem Nitzavim hayoim kulchem. And the pasuk continues, you are standing today, all of you. So the Chazal say, the Koy al Rosh Hashanah, this day. What is the day that it's referring to? So it says, the Chazal say it's going on Rosh Hashanah. Why is that so? What's the significance of Rosh Hashanah that has this idea of Nitzavim? That on this day of Rosh Hashanah, all the sparks of Neshamas, Nitzavim, Umisalim, B'Bekayram, they are standing fast and they are rising up in their source, Ad Lifnei Havaya, till beyond the Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. So he explains how and why that is so. The idea of Rosh Hashanah is similar to the head. That's why it's called the head of the year, not the beginning of the year like is brought down in Teres Roish, because it includes the chayis of the entire body. So too on Rosh Hashanah is included the life force and vitality of all the rest of the days of the year. The way the life force and vitality came from its original source and its root in the general thought of the supernal man, that includes all the life force and vitality of the 6,000 years that the world was created. Before Seder Ishtalshlus, after the Tzimtzum Rishon, there's a level called Adam Kadmon, usually translated primordial man. And over there, in one thought, the Eibishter includes all the life and all the energy that will come out for the entire 6,000 years of the world's existence, but it's all there in one glance. And not only the 6,000 years, also including the 50,000 jubilees that will be all the different levels that will become revealed when Mashiach comes, Beskira Achas, all in one glance. That comes out from there, from that level that includes all the chayas, comes out on Rosh Hashanah, the chayas for this individual year, for the year Tafshin Pei Daled. From that source comes out now the head of the year of Tafshin Pei Daled, that now this head includes the chayas of this entire year of Tafshin Pei Daled. We'll stop over here.